So it's interesting just looking at some of the terminology. I mean, you're talking about being missional, you're talking about church planting. And now, if I'm right about this word mission, doesn't it come from the same root word as the translation in the Latin for the word apostle? Is that right? Have I got that right? That mission is sort of Latin for apostle.
Pastor. Certainly there's a sense where apostolos, the idea is that we are sent.
Yeah.
There's a sentness to the character that's there. I think there's good to tie those together.
The reason I'm asking that, I don't know how familiar you are with sort of movements like the one I'm a part of, New Frontiers, which has, also been sort of planting churches. And we often use the word apostolic these days, and I'm kind of hearing a lot about mission, and I'm wondering if there certainly seems to be some overlap between that. I just wonder how you see that yourself in terms of this concept of being apostolic, with a small a, of course, not a big one.
Yeah. Well, I'm not. I use phrases like the apostolic impulse or apostolic focus, and I use those. In my understanding of Scripture, and probably in my faith tradition, we don't have the fivefold office. I don't know if you use that terminology in your movement, but we don't think that. We kind of see two normative offices in the local church: pastor, elder, and as one, and then deacon as the other. But so for me, I do believe in the apostolic impulse. I believe in the apostolic gifting, but I don't see it as authoritative as sometimes people in more Pentecostal, charismatic, or third wave movements do. People like Peter Wagner are kind of way out there on how authoritative it is. I wouldn't be at all comfortable there. But I do know that there are movements like yours and some others who hold a fivefold office. And what I would say is, even though I don't hold all five offices, I would want to have that apostolic impulse to be evident in the life of my ministry in my church and my movement as well. So I write about apostolic things, but I don't necessarily look for modern day apostles in the same authoritative sense as some do. I think modern day apostles, if we use that term with little a rather than big A, would be church planters and missionaries who are engaging in apostolic ministry in that setting.
Yeah, okay. And so for you, what would you say would be the things that would characterize a successful church plant? Is it really a lot to do with that leader, that apostolic leader, if you like, or missional leader, whatever you want to call him, who starts the church? Is that one of the kind of key things, would you say? Or are there other factors?
Well, I think, no, we've done some research. People can, I got a whole section of research on the website on that. And I think leadership is a big part of that. I mean, this is why when you plant a church, outside of a house church, but when you plant a church using the more typical means today, you need to have a church planter who is very gifted and called. Church planting is not something everyone can do. You can be a great pastor and not be an effective church planter. Matter of fact, you can be an effective church planter, not necessarily be a good pastor as well. But I think the idea here is that there are certain characteristics. We call those behavioral characteristics, and we actually have an assessment for them. And most movements in the West now take church planners that are going to be vocational church planners, and they put them through an assessment to say, are these characteristics present? Do you have the ability to cast a vision? Do you have the ability to build relationships with the unchurched? Do you have the ability to gather people to a cause and to recruit people for new things? So there are certain characteristics that are there that we search for, and those do make up, what makes a good church planting leader are those characteristics. And that's not all. There's so much more. There's godliness. There's the 1 Timothy 3 qualifications, but there are certainly some characteristics that we look for church planters.
Right. Okay. And so Ed, tell me, are you part of? This sounds very similar to what they do in Acts 29. Are you actually part of Acts 29, or related to them in some way, or what's the deal there? Is it the same assessment they use? Because I've heard them talk about that.
Yeah, I used to be on the board of Acts 29. Not now, but I speak at the events when they ask me to, and I'm happy to teach and train some of the Acts 29 church planners and pastors. So that's my main connection there is speaking at events, serving as if they have questions, I'm glad to help any way I can.
But their assessment then is very similar to the assessment you do, is it, or is it the same, or? Because they do an assessment.
Oh, well, I help them with it. So I mean, the assessments have largely become, Adrian, there's sort of a standard way. A guy named Charles Ridley developed a system back in the 80s that Acts 29 uses, my movement uses, most movements use. The Presbyterian Church in America has a little different system, but it's still got some similarities. So the ideas are pretty much the same. Most assessments look the same, and it makes sense because you're looking for the same characteristics, and so you end up with similar tools to help find those characteristics. And so those assessments would be the same. And again, you could find great people who love Jesus and who fit all the 1 Timothy 3 qualifications, who'd be tremendous pastors who cannot plant churches, not because they're not good preachers and good leaders, but because they don't have the entrepreneurial gifts that are often necessary. Your movement might call them more the apostolic gifts that are more necessary in the church planting.
Right. Okay. Yeah. No, that makes sense. That makes sense. So,